Yeah.
Well,
You notice anything interesting about that set list?
um, other
Well,
than it was pretty spectacular.
well, there's all the songs in there date from 1971 or earlier.
Hmm.
I don't know if that was an organizing principle or not, but it seems unlikely to have been a total coincidence. Just to run
Well,
that down, playing in the band, Uncle John's Band, Dear Mr. Fantasy / Hey Jude, Ramble on Rose, Brown Eyed Women, and Jack Straw. So four of those
all
songs were introduced in 71, yeah.
right. Actually, in terms of Grateful Dead repertoire, Dear Mr. Fantasy is the newest, even though it
That's
came out in
right.
1967.
Right.
But listen, we're only going to be here a brief moment because this is our last roundup. This is the suspense filled cliffhanger final episode of the season. Just only suspense is what's the second set going to be like. I'm Gary Lambert. He's David Gans. It has been such a pleasure being here on nugs.net. Go to nugs.net and
Yeah.
check it out. That's all we can tell you. You probably know what's been going on here. If you're watching the free preview, you can go back and get the whole show. You can go back and get the whole tour. You can travel in time and hear an immense amount of great music through nugs.net. And I think that's all we need to say about that. We are just celebrating this amazing tour. It has been really fantastic, and tonight is no exception. What a statement that first set was musically. Jump
Yeah.
right, jump right in, and get out there with playing in the band, and go on from there.
Yeah.
So we are just going to tell you that we have another pre-recorded interview. You probably saw Jeff Chimenti last night, Bobby Weir at the start of the tour, O'Teal a little while back. It's been a thrill talking to these guys in a more relaxed surrounding, so they're not like rushing into a room at halftime. So we recorded these interviews, and this one is one of our favorites of the whole tour. We want to thank all of our amazing guests. And while we're
Yeah.
thanking people, we have to thank Jacob Lima, who has been our partner in this through
Yeah.
technologically trying times. Brad Serling,
True.
Brad Serling, everyone at nugs.net, the entire
Aaron
Dead,
Skidmore.
yes, yes, everyone. Too many to name. The entire Dead and Company
Jeff
management
Gorman.
and crew and the whole gang. Everyone's been so much
Oh,
help to
yeah.
us. Yeah. So thanks to everyone. Thanks to all of you for watching and the incredibly kind remarks you've made over time. And I don't know if there's anything to add. This is the last you'll be seeing of us. So we're saying our good nights now. We're going to go straight to this interview and then we're going to go straight to the second set. David, a joy working with you as
As
ever.
always, Gary, thank you.
And we'll talk a lot more about this on Tales from the Golden Road tomorrow when we have a little more time. We hope you'll listen and tune in and give your observations on the tour. So let's go with our final interview of the tour. Couldn't have picked a better one, John Mayer. And we hope we get to do this again sometime soon. Such a joy and so appropriate to be finishing off this season of Dead Air with one of our favorite people to talk to, John Mayer. John, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, David. Hello. Good to see you again.
It's good to have you. It's been a great tour, man. I hope you've been enjoying it as much as we have.
I really have. I think you can hear it. I think the whole band is now in a flow state that's informed by having played the songs enough times, by having tenure, by knowing that the space we take up is ours. And so we can really occupy that space. And also having played these songs so many times that we know what works and know what doesn't. You know, I don't spend as much time in the solo spaces of these songs as I used to, because I've sort of condensed the message and it's a little less investigating what I could do on a certain thing and more just expressing in the moment exactly the thing I want to do and then pass it to Jeff. There's just this real economy that's happening in one sense that's leading to this opening up of the music just because there's all this space now because of I know it sounds like it shouldn't be that way, but the economy of thinking creates this incredible expanse of music, you know? So I'm aware that as we're playing, I'm going, oh, I'm finally, after 7 years, coming close to the intention I had in 2015 of what I wanted to sound like.
And you know what manifests beautifully in your willingness to step outside the solo space is that opens up the conversational space.
That's right.
You know that everybody's contribution informs everybody else's contribution, which is, you know, and the solo space is very particular to rock, you know, in a certain way, you know, and like all those follow spots are going to hit one guy and the focus is going to be there. Right. With this band, you know, the lighting is nebulous because the music is that way too. Right. You know, it really fits.
I'm almost more proud lately of my rhythm playing for Jeff or for Bob. I think I'm more inventive or supportive. We just know the songs. We've been around the track enough times. We're so familiar with the space we're in. I'm having more fun right now setting Jeff up. For instance, if he's going to take 3-4 passes of a solo, I can stage it. And I know his thinking so well that I'll feed him just a little bit of percussion on the guitar. And then I'll step it up and I'll raise the pitch up and be a little more active. And it's so great to just support other players in the band with really smart rhythm playing. That's the most fun for me right now, is thinking about being a producer for the music. Like, there's certain songs, if you isolated my guitar playing while someone else was soloing, you would go, oh, that's really thoughtful what's taking place. So it's not just chunk on the guitar. It's like, what are the most thoughtful ways I can rhythmically, melodically, motif-wise build this good cushion for Jeff or for whoever's soloing, for Bob, you know? And if you were to isolate that, it's there's a ton of intentionality happening in the rhythm playing that's more fun than it's ever been.
Yeah, this music doesn't really want a steady, you know, chunk of rhythm. This wants punctuation. This wants all of everybody to be playing shorter bits that add up to a bigger thing. And I also noticed that you guys have gotten the conversational stuff is even more flexible. Like, for example, there was a Here Comes Sunshine the other night, and all through the jam, you guys were knocking these allusions to China Cat Sunflower back and forth. And that was really fun. And then later we got a full-blown China Cat Rider out of this.
That was totally accidental. I think because there are so many songs that share a certain similarity to other riffs just that live on the guitar, that sometimes someone will say, oh, he quoted that. And I go, I actually didn't. I just fell into that same fret space as the thing. But it could also be, it can start unintentional and become intentional. So for instance, the Material Girl reference is not me going, it would be cool to throw a Madonna Material Girl reference into a solo. You start playing it and you go, oh, that sounds like Material Girl. Let's do it. You know, that's really how quotes should work. You shouldn't walk in with an idea of what it's going to be. And that's the other thing. On this tour for me, my mind has finally reached a kind of quiet where I am not pushing or pulling, and I'll stare off at the beer sign so as not to think about, should I push this way? And for the first time, I am playing without thinking in my career. First time in my career, I am weightless in terms of, maybe I should throw in a little pentatonic. Maybe I should go that. They're not, to the point now where I go, look, I've done this long enough and I'm going to do this long enough. I don't care if I play a bad solo. I don't care if it's not good. What's the truest thing I could play right now? So, you know, you guys both play a little bit. And I know, David, you play more than Gary musically?
These days I play every day, and Gary doesn't work as much, but he's a fine musician too.
Got it. He's a 5-star general who now works at the Pentagon. He's not in the desert.
I beg your pardon.
He's now working for the State Department. No longer in fatigues. I don't know what sort of metaphor is that, John? Did I lose my thought? Sort of. Oh, you know how it gets when there's a solo that's about to reach you. It's about to be your moment to play a solo. And you start thinking, what pedals will I use? What pickup selection will I be on? How will I approach? You start thinking before the solo, and that kills you when you start thinking about the solo. I have gotten to the point now, as a challenge to myself. I know it's coming. I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I do when that downbeat hits. And that's where I'll be. If it's good, it'll be good. If it's not, we got another one.
And that is the essence of this style of improvisation. The preparation for this is not working out what you're going to play, it's being ready for what happens.
It's just, here's your GIF, everyone. It's just opening it up and being so ego-free that that solo is not a means of impressing people. Because a solo has, since the beginning of time, been sort of an exposition of ability. How can you impress someone? At this point, I go like this. We're going to play They Love Each Other Again. I'm not worried about whether this is the greatest version of it, but what's the truest version of it? What's the one where my hand just goes where it goes? Where would they go if I didn't push? It's like a Ouija board. And those have become way more musical than me going, okay, 5, 4, strap in, 3, 2, blast off. You're already out of the moment by doing that. You know,
has any of this fed over into your other work, like with your own band? Does your soloing style, is it still a little more formal in those contexts than it is here, or has this polluted your appreciation of everything else you do?
It's really funny you say polluted, because the music that I make, you know, pop music, is much more rigid, and it has bigger sort of boundary lines and bigger taller walls that you can hit against. That's not right. That's not right. You know, the Grateful Dead music is so broad and wide, and it's an open field, that it's made me a bit more inventive. But I've had to learn that what I do in my music is a little bit more, not narrow, but maybe, you know, because when I try to be as evolved a player in my music so if I take what I've learned from Dead and Company and try to implant it into my music, it's like mistakey. It doesn't quite, it took me a while to come back into these sort of more dugout routes of playing that are just more appropriate for the music. But there are some moments where I think the thinking is benefited from having played in this band for so long now. But I have had to learn they are two different animals, and they're not quite reverse compatible, you know. But thinking wise, it's opened me up.
Interesting.
One thing this music doesn't just permit musicians to do, but kind of demands of them, is that they bring their own musical vocabularies and idiosyncrasies and, you know, ways of telling the story to the music. Yeah. And, you know, that's one of the reasons it doesn't sound the same every time, because one guy might, you know, one aspect of Jeff's personality may come to the fore, or O'Teal's, and, you know, and the older guys are always learning new things too, and figuring out new ways to permutate it. So, you know, we've talked obviously about the dialogues with you and Jeff a lot. And for me, as a listener to this music for 50 plus years, it's so rewarding to hear what these other guys bring to the music and how they continuously revitalize it. You know, I mean, Jeff sort of fulfills my dream of, you know, my fantasy of, well, what would it have sounded like if Bill Evans was in the Grateful Dead?
That's right.
You know, and then a minute later, it's like Jerry Lee Lewis was in the Grateful Dead, or whoever. Right. And O'Teal brings his amazing vocabulary of jazz and funk and everything, and it changes the music. And an interesting aspect lately has been the alternation of Billy and Jay, you know, which was unanticipated, and we miss Billy terribly, but Jay has brought something of himself to this music that I see you really digging. Like I see you turning to the drum riser and locking in with Jay on, you know, like a different kind of pocket. And it's
different kind of pocket. They are very different from one another. There's different styles of my playing or aspects of my playing that are accentuated with each of them. Billy is the original captain of these songs. So there is this, you know, I mean, regardless of how old you are or how long you've been doing, you still sound like you. Your voice still sounds like your voice. Your mannerisms are still your mannerisms. So he still plays like that music sounded. So for that reason, there's a meaningfulness to the notes that I can get because Billy is, you know, the founder who's still behind the drums. And then Jay has a more modern kind of performative rhythmic thing that for me is really fun to lock in the precision, at the expense of a certain inimitable. So it's not it's inimitable. So it's not a con. It's not a critique swing that Bill Kreutzmann has. Every drummer has a different, microscopically or not, different fingerprint. And so while I miss the certain dip in the Billy thing, I'm taking advantage of a kind of more strict, kind of precise thing that Jay has. And it's a matter of making the most of who's in the band at any given time. So I can do a thing with Jay that locks, and I can do a thing with Billy that swings. And they're very different, but they bring out different aspects of my playing personality. And the other thing I wanted to say about that is, like, the thing I've tried on this tour is to stay true to whatever my mood is. If my mood is not to do as many long runs, then don't do them, because they're not going to sound good. If my mood is to play a little bit more of a blues thing that night, there is historical precedent in Grateful Dead music for any way you want to play the guitar. If I want to do blues all night, that's 1969 Fillmore. If I want to be simple, a little more simple, stately, major scale, that's 1974. I've heard some of the best Jack Straws are from early 70s, and they are not blazing. They're very lyrical. And if I decide one night that I want to take the crowd up a little bit, or I want to sort of remind people who they're dealing with or something, I'll hit a tube screamer, and I'll do some long runs just because I'm in that mood. But to do any of these things while you're not in the mood, you're not going to pull them off, And so I've learned to be true to whatever my state of mind is. So how'd I do on the Billy J question? Still thinking about it. Still critiquing my answer. How'd I do on that?
I think you did fine on it.
Okay.
I think you said exactly what has been kind of in the back of my mind about it.
Good.
You and I have been happily exchanging little messages after shows and doing a bit of a debrief. And you came up with a great phrase. You feel that on this tour you've really reconciled, your way of honoring Jerry's place in the music melodically, the Mixolydian thing, and your traditional blues wheelhouse. And you use the phrase "blues in a blender."
Blues in a blender. I mean, that's the Jerry thing. We were talking before we started recording about Here Comes Sunshine. If you want to hear blues in a blender in the greatest way, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Dick's Picks 1 that there's this Here Comes Sunshine?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's not. Is Dick? That's the Hollywood
73.
That Here Comes Sunshine. As I listen to it still, I go, that's genius, because that's blues in a blender, which means, it's hard to explain and have it be palatable. Whatever the neurological synapses Jerry Garcia was when he played, it was the perfect blend of being in the moment, but also flitting around from idea to idea, picking up an idea, never quite playing the cliche, taking a bite and going, oh, this reminds me of this, and then moving over to a different thing. But if you try to do that, you will sound chaotic. So for whatever reason, this blues in a blender thing would be play part of a phrase right here, and then float up to this. It's like Tai Chi, and then float up to this part. And now we're in a major scale for a minute. But now we're playing a major seventh over a dominant seventh sort of blues thing, which always turns it childlike and fun, right? The major seventh, and then spin around and go down an octave. Now playing in complete minor pentatonic for a minute, and then going back up. And so this blues in a blender thing is, it's never just one scale, just reminding himself of another thing each time he plays, but then also simultaneously being incredibly disciplined in staying in the, how do you do? No one knows how to do it. Like I've said, it would take 6 guitar players on one tour to keep trading the guitar off to come close to what that one mind was thinking. That's why I listened to the music in the first place. I went, how do you do that? How are those your instincts? And they're perfect. That Here Comes Sunshine, I would hand to any guitar player whether they identify it as being a deadhead or not, and say, go learn this one. Because guess what? You can't. You can't tab it out. You can't play it back, and learn whatever that is. Learn whatever that is. Because as soon as you hear it, you can play it. This is the trick. Mm-hmm. You could play it. You just don't know how to think of it. That's the game. You could stop at any bar of that Here Comes Sunshine and go, okay, I can do that. But you wouldn't. And that is the entire fundament of this music. You could have, but you wouldn't have thought to. And what I'm trying to do is get that intention to carry it on in some way, even if I'm not playing exactly like Jerry, because I can't. By the way, let's get it straight. Not because I'm wise enough not to. If I could, I would play exactly like him, but I can't. So I default to playing like me, trying to play like him. That 7 years later, starting to sound like me, sounding like me in a way that everyone seems to appreciate. But
well, this goes back to that thing of the Grateful Dead being so eclectic that Jerry's vocabulary included so many different musical idioms, and that sensibility was you can pull anything in that's appropriate. So yeah, blues lick here, a country lick there, a jazz lick there, because it's all coming through the same heart.
Yep, that's right. And one of the things that's really interesting is it starts to become anachronous in terms of what year you're listening to. It can sometimes sound like it's all happening in the same year. And you listen to, the Sirius station, and you might hear 2 hours worth of Dead music that spans 30 years, but feel like it was all on the same stage. But inside of those, the differences in those performances are records that Jerry heard. Yeah. And guitar players are always picking up things off of a record and going, I think I'm going to do that more tonight. So while Jerry is a giant influence on so many people's playing, he was also a receiver of influence while he was listening to records going, I'm going to steal that Freddie King thing. And he did. I mean, there's a couple of blues songs where he's doing Freddie King.
And, another thing about that is you hear that, you listen to 1966 Grateful Dead, and you're much more hearing Jerry Garcia as a guy who's learning from blues guys. You're hearing the Lonnie Mack in his playing and the Freddie King and all that. And I've wondered for years, and it's futile to wonder how it could have been otherwise. Had Jerry fallen in with any other band of eccentrics, if he may have remained just a really good conventional blues guitarist, because he needed the idiosyncrasies of Bob Weir and Phil Lesh and the swing of Bill Kreutzmann to inform what he became. And that was always the great appeal of the Grateful Dead, is that the collective informed what each individual did.
I liken listening to the Grateful Dead to looking at one of those old water games, those games with the buttons, and you had to get like the ball and it would be the little water wheel thing going. It's like a Rube Goldberg device. Maybe that's a better metaphor. And you can watch the music, you can watch the gears turn, and you can move the sight line of your hearing in a way. I want to listen to Phil for a minute. Phil's doing a descending thing. Ding, 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 ding. And he would never known that could work. And then you flash back to what Jerry's doing and how he's using that descending thing as a slide to go up it and off it. And it is some of the most synesthetic stuff going on where you're watching it go by and you can listen to it over. Sometimes I'll just solo Bob Weir's guitar playing and go, how does a guy do that? And his inversions are insane. By the way, his guitar playing to me is better than it's ever been in Dead and Company this year. I'm having so much fun listening to his playing. He is truly playing it like the horn he wants it to be.
Yeah.
He's doing stuff that's making me go, what? He came in on, it was either Watchtower or I don't remember the other song, the other 2 nights ago. And he dropped in with this microtonal singing that made me look at him and scream. I got to be on video going, what the F? It was the most incredible thing I ever heard him do. He's really we are pinging high scores on this tour. 7 years in, we're doing the best versions of some songs that we've been playing for years. So this is,
I completely agree. And one thing that has informed the way these songs are being played is, and we've talked about this with the other guys as well, is unprecedented placements in the set. Like Cumberland Blues coming after drums was an amazing innovation, because Cumberland Blues was played pretty much the same way for about 50 years.
Right.
And then suddenly it started turning up in second sets and ultimately after drums, and it opened up in ways that it never opened up before.
Yeah. It also wakes us up too, to not have the same song in the same spot. The only time it's challenging for me is when there is a second set song that requires a certain kind of depth into the set to reach. That's a little early in the first set. So to do,
you mean like
Dark
an
Star
estimated profit type thing?
There you go. Estimated profit in set one. I look at set one as still wearing your work attire. At set two, the assless chaps come out. So it's difficult to sort of immediately, well, because I'm also, as a guitar player, I'm soloing all the time. I've learned to stage opening the throttle so that people don't go, you did that. At least of me doing that, going, no one screams louder than I do at myself, going, oh, that one again? This one you've been doing all night? I think about you guys a lot. I'm like, I hope they don't hear me that I'm doing the same riff again. So I tend to try to open the nozzle as I go. And when there's a second set song in the first set, it's a little difficult to do justice to the song and still try to keep the staging of the events. But other than that, it's the confusion of it keeps you fresh. To know that you're going to do it. What did we do the other night? It was a help, slip, China Cat, Know You Rider, drums, something, Franklin's.
Yep. Right.
And we had that idea at Soundcheck. I had the idea to do that slow coda after Days Between. Yeah. This sort of dirge, don't, and Bob said, let's do it minor. And I went, Jeff and I went, Bob, it's so dark. It's so dark to do it minor. And then we did the old compromise, which is the first two are minor, second two are major. So that was beautiful. That came from Soundcheck, was blum, 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 and then down, down, do, 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 bing, bing. And people caught on to what it was. And it was really, really fun.
That was really sweet, with feeling that coming on and then realizing what it was, because you did sneak it in. That's true.
That was the Bob idea, is just make it that dark so people, and his eyes lit up. He went, then they're going to not realize that this is what it is till they figure it out. And I was like, yeah, it's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So I love not knowing what's coming next and not knowing what to expect. There was, toward the end of the Grateful Dead, things got kind of set into stone, and you kind of knew if this song was the first song out of drums, you could sort of predict what the rest of the show was going to be. You guys, with Matt's connivance, have turned this into a much more interesting game, because now we don't know what's coming next, and you guys do, but you always find a cool way to get there, and it's really, really fun to be listening to that and to have all these pleasant surprises come down.
It's fun for us too, because now we know all the pivot points in the songs. So we could put any two songs together and we'd understand where they meet, where the dovetail joint is, Yes. It's a woodworking reference. So I'm full of them today, or full of it. So we all know where those things would plug in or how they would plug in. And I now have the confidence to look over at Bob and understand what this means, right? This big a head movement. I got it. I know where we're going. We're going to the big change in whatever the thing is. And it's just really the tenure, I think, of it is what allows us to all really take these chances. Like, we all own these seats. We're not going to get kicked out because we tried something and it didn't work. So you take that playfulness, but the 7 years of experience in these songs and knowing how much they can take before they break, or how long you can go before people would go, all right. And really intimately knowing the songs. I know how much a song can take of my playing on it. And my favorite thing to do is to where you think I'm going to take two solos and I take one and I want Jeff to play. That's the love of it now. is I don't want to go a second time. You go a second time and you realize in the middle of the second solo that you didn't need a second solo. That is humbling and cringy for me. So I love stating it economically and then going, boom, and I get to do these really fun background things behind him that just make him be able to launch even further with his playing. It's nowhere else in life will it ever be this fun. It'll never be this fun.
Yeah, I love your rhythm playing off of Jeff. I mean, that's, because you get to chord things in a not traditionally Grateful Dead way when Jeff is soloing, because Jeff is going outside the changes a little bit and reharmonizing things. So you are not a conventional rhythm player at that moment either.
I get to use all these tricks. Am I going to use single note percussive stuff? Am I going to do Motown, highly percussive, I'm trying to think, Cornell Dupree stuff. I think about Cornell Dupree a lot when I play guitar. These kind of slidey double stop things. Am I going to lay out and let him do a thing? Am I going to start soloing with him? He and I have a way of soloing together that doesn't step on each other's toes, but just gets people more and more. I've done hundreds and hundreds of solos. I have never gotten as big a response from the crowd as Jeff has on any solo he plays on any. He just has a way of whooping the crowd up. There's also the sense that I get enough, people have that psychological thing of like, you get enough. And I do, but nothing's more fun than watching him go around and around. Jeff Chimenti has never taken one pass too many. In the entire time I played with that man on stage, I've never seen him go for another one and plateau. If he's going for another one, he's got another one. And he'll do something with the drawbars, and he'll do something with the percussiveness of his playing. Boom, 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 boom.
And I've got to say that the things that Jeff plays that get a real rise out of the audience are not your traditional get a rise out of a stadium rock audience. They are incredibly, incredibly adventurous and, transgressive of traditional rock cliche.
Yes, I don't know how he does it. He's one of the best keyboard players I've ever heard in my life. Like the best. His ear is insane. He's the most well-rounded player. He's the most performative player. He's the whole package. He really is. I find him really.
And he radiates joy while he's doing it.
He's done a thing with Grateful Dead music where my favorite era is the Keith era, because Keith was playing in a very simplistic way. He wasn't playing these bluesy chords. It was almost childlike. They were always very, very simple kind of chords a lot of the time. And Jeff does a bit more of a honky tonk thing. He is more of a blues guy. And it's really interesting to hear his take. He'll even put blues for a moment, like on a song like Stella Blue, which is very fundamentally sort of thing you'd play on a xylophone or something, and he'll throw these blues chords in that I've never heard on that song before. They really church it up. That's another example of someone going, here's who I am, here's who I'm going to be in these songs, and it's always better for it.
I hate to cut in and interrupt this, but we have run out of time. We've been doing this for a solid 30 minutes, and we really need to bring it to an end, much as I
because some band is going to play a second set after this.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
This is being wedged in halftime, and we never know exactly how efficiently the band's going to get back on stage, so we have to be a little conservative with this. But as I said, I can't think of a better way to finish off this season on our little talk show. John, we are so thankful to you. By the way, you can spend a full 2 hours on Tales from the Golden Road anytime and
Thank
read
you.
about this stuff.
Thank you.
The door is always open for you there. And so thanks to you. I want to thank the whole band. I want to thank everyone who works for the band for letting this happen. And the fans have been absolutely stellar.
I agree. And we've been more connected than we've ever been. The fans, the band, you guys and me, we're texting after the show. I mean, it's really become the community that I hoped it could become. And so that's because of your acceptance and the fans' acceptance. So I can't thank you enough.
All right.
It's
well,
great.
Yeah, thanks to everybody who watched us this season. And John, wishing you well. Hope to see you in person one of these days very soon. Wow. It's been way too long since that's happened.
I know.
Given the fraught circumstances of the last couple of years, but the music has brought us so much solace and so much joy. So thanks to you. Thanks to the guys.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, David. And we'll see you soon.